What's up guys, my name is Ace, and it seems like a lot of people have still been using the C58 as their long-range assault rifle in Warzone since the Season 4 Reloaded update, despite the nerfs that it got. And honestly, this did surprise me a little bit that competitors were still using the C58 after this update when you look at the time to kill numbers and its performance in relation to other weapons for long-range fights. However, it was hanging in the meta primarily because the 4x optic was bugged, and it still significantly reduced recoil after the update. Yesterday, Raven fixed this bug with the 4x optic on the C58, and now it no longer reduces recoil. So this is what it looked like pre-patch with the 4x optic and no other attachments. And now let's have a look at it post-patch, and you can see here we've got so much more recoil to deal with the C58. And in my opinion, this change is going to take the C58 out of the long-range meta. I still think this is a very solid and usable gun, and you can absolutely still perform well with the C58. I just think if you're trying to play at the highest levels, if you're trying to play as well as possible, this is no longer going to be the best option for long-range fights. And I wanted to share a few amazing alternatives after the Season 4 Reloaded updates that I think you guys are going to much prefer for longer-range engagements. And just so I'm clear, when I'm talking about longer ranges, I'm talking about like really long range fights and setups that you would typically pair with an SMG. So the guns that are designed to just be dominating people even out to 100+ meters. And let's hop into the first one. This is the QBZ-83. This gun is insanely accurate. There is very little recoil with this. You can see with the most accurate setup, which I'll share in a little bit, this thing just has a small amount of vertical recoil, some visual side-to-side bounce, but it's purely visual. And in general, it's just pinpoint accurate. You're going to be able to hit shots so effectively, even beyond 100 meters with this. And when we have a look at our time to kill values in comparison to the C58, you can see the time to kill potential for the QBZ is noticeably faster in both close as well as long range fights. However, it's not all upsides with the QBZ. There is a bit of a trade-off here and something you really have to be aware of, and that is the fact that unlike the C58, which has a flat body damage profile, so it deals the same amount of damage to the toe as it does to the chest, the QBZ does require upper torso shots if you want to reach its time to kill potential. And up close, you have to hit 4 out of your 8 shots to the upper torso. The rest can hit lower torso, which is very reasonable, especially with how accurate this gun is. And also, just keep in mind, if you mix even just one headshot in there, it just makes it so much more forgiving here. So it's actually very reasonable to expect an 8-shot kill in those closer range fights. However, at longer ranges, we do have to hit 8 out of our 9 shots to the upper torso, and therefore it's much less forgiving. But again, if you mix a headshot or 2 in there, then it does make it much more forgiving, and you'll get that 9-shot kill potential. But I also wanted to mention, even if we don't get the 9-shot kill, and it does take us that extra shot, so it's going to be a 10-shot kill, this gun is still way more accurate than the C58, and therefore you're more likely to be hitting those shots anyway, whereas the C58, beyond 100 meters, it's much more likely you're going to be missing shots, and the C58 has a noticeably lower fire rate, and therefore it's really unforgiving if you are missing shots. Your time to kill will increase very quickly, whereas with the QBZ, it doesn't increase nearly as harshly for any missed shots. So even with that in mind, if we're just assuming this is going to be a 10-shot kill at long ranges all the time, I still consider the QBZ to be a superior long-range weapon to the C58. And if you haven't given it a shot yet, if you're looking for peak accuracy, this is the setup that I'd recommend. So with this, we're maxing out our bullet velocity as well as our accuracy. We've got the agency suppressor, task force barrel, axial arms 3x optic, the field agent grip, and then the salvo 60-round fast mag. And the reason we're using the fast mag on the QBZ is this currently doesn't harm your aim down sight time at all. So you actually get a better aim down sight time than the 60-round drum, which is very unique. Usually you don't want to go with this attachment. But yeah, this actually gives us an aim down sight time for this setup of 334 milliseconds, which is amazing for a long range build that's as accurate as this gun is. So that also makes it a lot more versatile, and you're able to challenge fights in those close to mid-range situations a lot more effectively because of that. So that's what I go with if you're going for peak accuracy. However, I noticed something interesting with the QBZ as well. I did test the recoil with the 3x versus the 4x optic, and it turns out if I drop that field agent grip and I use the 3x optic, you can see there's definitely more side-to-side bounce, and that's going to harm your ability to be super accurate at really long ranges. However, if we swap that out for a 4x optic, it basically eliminates most of that side-to-side bounce, and we get better horizontal recoil control with it. And you can see we've still got a very, very accurate gun without having to use a field agent grip. And this now frees up an attachment slot. So you could use this on a Raider stock if you want, so you can strafe back and forth in a fight, which especially at really long ranges, this will help you dodge bullets because you're going to be moving faster than their bullet velocity will be able to compensate for. Or if you wanted, you could go with a different front grip that can help with mobility or something instead of accuracy. Or you could use a rear grip and get an even faster aim down sight time. It just opens up more options for you. So I just wanted to show that as an alternative if you wanted to be able to drop that, if you don't mind using the 4X optic. So that's the first long-range alternative that I personally am having a great time with since the Season 4 Reloaded update. Now let's move on to the next option, and this one's actually more accurate. This is the Krig 6. And you can see here with my stack setup, there is almost no recoil at all with this. It kicks very slowly upwards. You don't have that same visual side-to-side bounces with the QBZ, and it's just super easy to control and predict for extremely long ranges. And the nice thing about this one is even though it doesn't have the same time to kill potential as the QBZ, it's still better than the C58, and it only requires torso shots for that time to kill potential, unlike the upper torso shots with the QBZ, and torso shots in general are much easier to hit. And again, up close, it only takes 4 out of 8 torso shots to kill, which is very easy to achieve with this gun. And then at long ranges, again, it is going to take 8 out of 9 torso shots, so there will still be situations where it's going to be 10 shots to kill, but it's much easier at least to hit those 8 out of 9 torso shots, or mix in a couple headshots there, and you're still going to get that 9-shot kill potential quite consistently with this gun, even at extremely long ranges. So that extra forgiveness over the QBZ is quite nice. It's also a little bit more accurate than the QBZ, and way more accurate than the C58 now. And with this one, this is the setup we're going to be using. It's basically the exact same setup as my first QBZ setup, so agency suppressor, the 6th barrel attachment, 3X optic, field agent grip, and the standard 60-round magazine. We're not going to go with the fast mag on this because that would hurt our aim down sight time too much. And with this, the one downside compared to the QBZ is we don't get that crazy good aim down sight time for a long range build. We get an aim down sight time of 434 milliseconds, which is still very reasonable for a long range gun, especially if you're pairing this with an SMG, so you've got your close ranges covered. So there's nothing really wrong with that aim down sight time by any means. It's very reasonable. And with this build right here, you're going to be able to just beam people at 100 plus meters, no problem. And I would go so far as to say that this is likely going to be the best long-range build in the entire game until we get another weapon balance update. While some of the LMGs may compete in the time to kill and accuracy department, they're just not nearly as versatile. Their mobility tends to be too slow, their handling tends to be too slow, and therefore, just as an all-around long-range build, this is likely going to be the best option out there, and I'd highly recommend that you give this one a shot. But finally, there is one last gun I wanted to mention in today's video as a viable alternative to the C58, and this is the Fara 83. The Fara 83 is now much more accurate than the C58, so it's going to handle itself much better recoil-wise at range. However, it isn't nearly as accurate as the previous two that I talked about. So if we're talking like 100 plus meters, like really, really long-range assault rifle fights, I still think I would rather have the previous two options, but I just wanted to present this as an alternative to the C58 because its killing potential is just far superior to the C58 now. As we can see here, just like with the C58, we deal the same amount of damage anywhere in the body, and therefore you don't have to worry about torso or upper torso shots with this. And then on top of that, our time to kill values are very noticeably better at close range as well as long range compared to the C58. So when I'm looking at this, and I also see that the Fara 83 is more accurate than the C58, it's kind of a no-brainer. I don't really see any reason to use a C58 over a Fara 83. Now, having said this though, there are some drawbacks to the Fara 83 in relation to the previous two alternatives that I talked about. And the first one is when we build it for maximum accuracy here, our aim down sight time is 501 milliseconds, which is very slow. Even for a long range build, this is quite slow. It's still usable as long as you've got an SMG as your secondary, but somebody with a QBZ is going to get onto target very noticeably faster. And even with my Krig build, they're going to be getting onto target faster than you can with a Fara 83. So that is going to help with the more realistic time to kill value. Additionally, like I've already mentioned, the recoil on the Fara 83 just doesn't keep up with the other guns. You're more likely to be missing some of your shots at those long ranges with the Fara 83 compared to something like the Krig 6 or the QBZ. And again, this is why I would rather have a Krig or a QBZ for extremely long-range fights compared to the Fara 83. But I did just want to point out that the Fara 83 is one of those guns that is so incredibly versatile and also very powerful. It's probably the best overall gun in the game as far as handling the widest variety of situations and having an incredible time to kill. It's just if we're looking at the extreme long-range meta, the Krig and the QBZ are superior in my opinion. But with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. I'd like to know in the comment section below, do you agree with me? Do you think the C58 is now going to be falling out of the meta now that we've got that 4x nerf and the recoil is much harder to control at really long ranges? And then also, out of these 3 alternatives, which one do you prefer for a long-range assault rifle build? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.